Hello and welcome to CNET's live coverage of Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference 2022. I'm Ayaz Akhtar with Alexi Savides and Bridget Carey. So folks, the keynote starts at 10 a.m. Pacific, so with this little pre-show. Being a developer conference, we're going to get lots of software. Expect a ton of stuff. We're talking iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, maybe tvOS. We could get a look at new hardware if we're lucky. We're doing things a little differently this year. We're going to be here live with our pre-show. Then when the event starts, we're going to put up our live blog here. Okay, so Apple doesn't let us restream their stuff. So Tim Cook is going to talk and he's going to do his whole stuff and show everything. When he wraps up, we'll be back here live with our reactions. And interestingly, we've got Dan Ackerman, who's actually at the event. He just checked in with us via iPhone. That's right. Non-Apple people are allowed back into Cupertino. Let's see how this went. The video wasn't perfect, so please bear with it.
So I'm here at Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, California for WWDC, the keynote. And coming up here, I really didn't know what to expect. We weren't quite sure. Was it going to be pre-recorded, live? We're going to be in the Steve Jobs Theater. We're going to be out on folding chairs in the lawn somewhere. So it looks like we're kind of doing this lawn party style. There's a lot of folding seats out here in the middle lawn area. There's a gigantic video screen set up, and there are other sub-video screens that are. So I'm here at Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, California for WWDC, the keynote. And coming up here, I really didn't know what to expect. We weren't quite sure. Was it going to be pre-recorded, live? We're going to be in the Steve Jobs Theater. We're going to be out on folding chairs in the lawn somewhere. So it looks like we're kind of doing this lawn party style. There's a lot of folding seats out here in the middle lawn area. There's a gigantic video screen set up, and there are other sub-video screens that are more in this like indoor overhang area, again, with folding chair seating. So it looks like they're kind of trying to do something where you're half outside, kind of half inside. That probably means you won't have to wear your mask the whole time because you're outside. And I think it's probably the best case scenario of how to do a big event like this right now, you know, in the world that we're living in. As for the actual event, obviously we expect iOS and iPadOS and watchOS, maybe tvOS, definitely macOS. This is obviously a very developer-driven show, so that's really the stuff that they focus on, things that developers are going to need to know to make new apps. But because that Apple Store website is down right now, that also hints to us that some sort of hardware is coming. The smart thinking on that has really gone back and forth a bunch of times over the last few weeks. I would say the latest is probably most likely new MacBook Air that kind of looks like the current MacBook Pros. Second most likely a new Mac Pro desktop. I would say 60% Air, 40% Mac Pro. Maybe we're going to see them both, but we're just going to have to wait for the actual keynote to find out. That's what's happening down here at Apple headquarters. Back to you guys.
So folks in the chat, I do see you right now. You guys are freaking out about the audio and video quality. That was Dan Ackerman at Cupertino. There's tons of people there. They're all either using the same Wi-Fi. The best connection we had was on 5G. So that just shows you how many people are there using that connection. Lex, I want to pick your brain. You saw behind Dan how they're dealing with this thing. What do you think about the way they're handling this event this year?
I am just so excited that we have started to come back to a little bit of in-person. Obviously, the invite list was fairly small, but it does look like it's going to be a fairly larger scale outdoor exercise than I was honestly expecting. I think it's going to be really interesting to sort of see the test of how many people can see the screens of their laptop in bright outdoor lighting, because it doesn't look like there's going to be any shade. So it's really going to be testing out the max brightness for people. I wonder if we're going to be seeing any improvisation in terms of someone making kind of a makeshift hood over their laptop screens or phone screens. So we'll see how it goes, but you can see there's a little bit of a shaded area behind there too. I think I'd probably be sitting in that neck of the woods if I was attending today. But I'm just excited to see people back there again today. And from what I understand, the safety measures have been pretty good as well. So I'm excited. How about you, Bridget? Are you yay for in-person events or still on the fence?
Yeah, I'm yay, and I'm yay for them being smart and doing something different. I'm always all about like, let's be flexible, let's get creative on how we get people together, and they have that hybrid kind of like outdoor setting. So awesome for thinking of something different.
I'm being let known by everybody that my audio is just really lousy. So Lex, would you mind driving the ship while I try to figure out what's going on my side?
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem, Ayaz. I hope to see you soon. Okay, so I guess the first thing we should obviously talk about is WWDC being primarily a software event with some hints of potentially hardware. And we've heard whispers of, iOS 16 for quite some time coming down the pipeline. It's one of the main leaders in terms of actually hearing about some of these like leading rumors is Mark Gurman from Bloomberg. And he's come out with a couple of articles over the past couple of months detailing a little bit about what we can potentially expect from iOS 16 today. Now, obviously, we're not looking at a potentially huge redesign, so it's going to look fairly similar to what we're expecting, what we're already using from iOS 15 and so on. But let's talk about some of the specifics that we're actually potentially going to see in terms of the update today. So, always on lock screen with widgets. Now, this one's exciting to me if this one actually comes to fruition. I think that this is something that Apple users have probably wanted for a while. At least I have, especially as someone who switches back and forth between Android and iOS. Going from the always on lock screen on Android, just being able to have quick glances at notifications is really exciting. Potentially, we're also going to see a redesign of how iOS runs notifications. So rather than that kind of awkward grouping that we currently have at the moment, maybe it's going to be a little bit more refined. And also some messaging app updates. Now, this one's a little bit more exciting. Are we going to finally see Apple support RCS, or is it going to be something a little bit more innocuous, maybe more on kind of like emulating some social app features? There's some rumors about some audio messaging features built into iMessage as well. Bridget, I want to know your kind of wish list, because that's kind of the expectations of what we're getting from iOS. I have my own wish list, but I want to hear from you what you really would like to see in the next iOS.
I was interested how you're getting excited about this always on display. I'm going like, do I need that? Is that just going to kill my battery? Because I have the always on the watch, and I like that because you could just glance at the time. But maybe without having it in my life, I don't know I need it in my life. It might be nice to see if it's an easy toggle on off button. In terms of the software itself, I am interested in what they're doing to push us forward in like healthy notifications instead of always feeling like we're always being dinged all the time and feeling overwhelmed, because sometimes all these widgets and all these notifications can be a little bit much. And I have something on my wish list that I don't know if they're even going to touch. And that is if they're going to talk about iMessage. Google recently poked at Apple for not being compatible with RCS, that fundamental standard in messaging. And Apple almost has been kind of proud that it's not part of that with iMessage. And as a consumer, I just can't help but wonder if Apple is going to be like, let's talk about that, or tell you why we're doing something different in iMessage. They're always about security. I just get annoyed when I think about how, yes, Apple iMessage encrypted, great, but I have people in my life that use Android. So is Apple just going to always ignore that? It's always the green bubble, blue bubble, talk that we always have. But it's just one of those curiosities that I wonder if they're going to touch, considering Google just recently poked at them.
I see Ayaz, testing. Are you back? Are you with us? Are you coming to us live?
No, because I got to set something up.
No. Still having some issues. No problem. Well, we got so much more we can dive into iOS. So I love this talk about potentially RCS. Obviously, maybe that's something that we can dive into a little bit in our post show. One thing that I'm really hoping is obviously a little bit more refined multitasking, split screen view for iOS specifically. Now, maybe this is something that it might be exclusive to the larger screen phones like the 13 Pro Max and presumably the 14 Pro Max. One other thing I was really thinking of the other day when I was scrolling through the multitudes of apps that I have on my phone, maybe, you at home have this problem as well. A lot of those called it more unused apps, or the ones that I kind of hide from my main screen, go into the App Center, and then they kind of get lost to this world of artificial intelligence grouping. Why can't we have a way to group those so we can just see either the list view or the icon view, kind of like how the Apple Watch does it? I don't know if you've used an Apple Watch, but you can long press on the screen and actually get a long list, an alphabetical list of all the apps that you have on your watch. I would love to see that equivalent on iOS. I think for a lot of people, who might not necessarily want that automatic grouping, I would love to see a way just to have a really simple list. And while we're on the topic of talking about how to configure apps, please, Apple, can we just put apps wherever we want? We don't have to lock them into the grid. Can we just arrange them? Like if I want one at the top left and then a bunch at the bottom, let me do that. Let me have a little bit more customization and widgets as well, specifically. Like at the moment, I love the widgets, but they are not as active as I would like, not being able to actually control apps from within them. You can only kind of just like see the information, tap in, and then the app launches. Imagine if we could actually have a little bit more control from those widgets. I would be excited about that. Ayaz, are you with me?
I'd be excited if you can hear me or not. So if you can hear me, let me know. We can. Okay, so I'm using this microphone, and if it's worse, buy me a new microphone, people. Send one over. I don't know what else I can do about that. So I was listening to you guys. You guys are always very intelligent. I wanted to touch upon the point real quick about the always on display. If Apple does go ahead with that, hopefully they can lower the frame rate when that's going on. That way it doesn't kill the battery. Apple's power management has always been phenomenal with their devices. I don't know what they're doing, but they're really, really good at that stuff. When it comes to iOS, oh, good gosh. Would I love to be able to choose the way my home screen looks? I'm an Android person when it comes to my phone. If they just let me use Google Maps as a default Maps app, I might seriously think about iOS as a serious thing, but I'm an iPad guy as well, so there's that kind of stuff. Let's talk a little bit about iOS 16 because you guys were talking about that. Is the video much better? I can't even tell. Anyway, let's talk about iOS 16. We got stuff from Grimmin. He was talking about the idea that it's chock full of references to an Apple AR headset, which would be very strange. If iOS 16 has it, that means theoretically this headset could appear in the life cycle of iOS 16 and iOS 17, which would start in June of this year and next year. Bridget, do you think there's any chance we would see anything to do with an augmented reality headset?
I think so. I mean, I'm seeing the same reports you all are. We just had a New York Times report saying that this could be the thing everyone comes away talking about. It might steal the show. Apparently, Apple, according to these reports, has enlisted Hollywood directors like Jon Favreau to help create content for this virtual system, an AR, a virtual reality, a hybrid kind of thing. I haven't seen a photo. I've heard it described as a pair of ski goggles. But whatever they're going to be talking about to developers to get them excited to make content for AR, this is the spot to do it. Apple is so late to this, and I feel like there's a big challenge in getting people excited about, well, what can VR AR do at this point? Microsoft's been on top of it. It's so important for Facebook. They changed their own name to Meta. Although that said, I don't know if Tim Cook's or anyone is gonna utter the word metaverse. That would be very interesting to me. Recently, an executive from Apple Arcade went over to work for Disney and to work on their metaverse content, but they don't call it metaverse content. I believe they call it next generation storytelling content. So will that even be a word that's used today? I don't know. But either way, Apple has to play in this space. And you keep hearing about everyone's talking about headsets of the future, but is it something for me? Is it passive content if you're getting these directors to make content for it? Or are they going to be talking a lot about participatory content? We've seen AR work well for like specific work environment help. Like that's something that Microsoft does really well for. Apple always leans into education. Are we going to hear about like how great it is to learn about dinosaurs because they have new AR headsets for the classroom? Because that's what Apple really does well, is work with classrooms. So I am curious to see what they're going to do. And I'm curious to see who is this going to be for, because it is a weird space. It's either you love playing with new technology, but you might not want something to wear on your face because you're not really sure how it's going to impact your life.
Lex, you know a lot about wearables. Do you think that Apple, of all the companies in the world, could get people to put something attached to their face at a regular interval per day?
I mean, I think that there is a lot of promise here. If you take a look at how Apple has very slowly integrated us into the world of wearables across all different parts of our body and talking to each other. I think it's a slow and steady approach. So it's not just, bam, let's come out with a VR headset back in 2016, 2017, like some other companies. It's like, let's test out certain technologies in our other products, see how people respond to it, and see how people actually use it before we start integrating that into kind of, I guess, a standalone product. I guess I'm very skeptical about having a headset on my face, but it's maybe just because I haven't used something that has truly clicked for me. If you think about how things like the AirPods and Watch interact, for example, that's just like, I guess, a small part of the potential triangulation that could happen with a headset. I'm also thinking about giving us hints about the future of how Apple might be dealing with AR and VR when it comes to things like spatial audio, dynamic head tracking, all these things that are actually really crucial to make a headset work really, really well. We've already seen hints of those. We already know how some of those features work, like the AirPods Pro had that spatial audio feature that was unlocked with iOS 14 that unlocked the dynamic head tracking with the accelerometers and the gyroscopes. And things like Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro also getting support for things like spatial audio and VR audio as well. So the hints are there in the products, and it's just about seeing how they all fall together. So I'm not necessarily expecting any kind of big headset announcement today, even though I would love to hear that. We've been talking about this for such a long time, ever since CNET broke the story that Apple was working on this headset a couple of years ago. But I think we might see some really promising clues today. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes really well peeled for all of those little nuggets that might be dropped to hint what might be coming. Did we lose? I think we lost Ayaz. Not a problem. Okay, let's move on to WatchOS 9. Speaking of all things Apple Watch, so this is one of the things that I'm actually more excited for today than many of the other things, but I admit my total wearable watch bias here. So WatchOS 9, now not again expecting a major kind of visual overhaul. However, it might adapt more accurately to the larger screen display on the Series 7. Say, for example, watch faces might be redesigned altogether to take advantage of more screen real estate, presumably in advance of the Apple Watch Series 8 that might be released later in the year in around September. We might be seeing something like a low power mode. Now, you might be familiar with the Apple Watch. As soon as you reach about 10%, you can put the watch into a low power mode, but it really is just like, it's standby. It doesn't let you do anything. So now think about how potentially iOS currently does low power mode when you hit 20%. I mean, obviously you can toggle it earlier if you want, but it allows some notifications and things to come through. So I think if we see that introduced in WatchOS 9 today, that will be really exciting because, as you know, the Apple Watch doesn't have the best battery out there. And I really hope that we can get just a little bit more out of the battery with some low power features. Sleep tracking is another one that is really, I guess, a hot ticket. Now, it's not the most exciting feature, I will give you that, but a lot of other wearables are doing sleep tracking really, really well. And Apple's implementation, at least in its first-party app, is not necessarily as robust as some of the offerings that other wearables give us. So I would like to see a little bit more information about sleep tracking and a better way to kind of track more than just time in bed and things like breathing rate. And maybe we'll bring a bit more into terms of heart rate variability. Anyway, there's a lot more metrics in there that I can talk about, but I don't want to bore you. Bridget, what do you think is an exciting thing that you would love to see on the watch? Is there one kind of feature, either of the ones that I've talked about or something maybe kind of out there that you would love to see Apple implement today?
You know, bringing up the Apple Watch and just before this talking about this potential talk about AR, VR, you know, I wasn't sold on the concept of wearing an Apple Watch right away. It wasn't until a few generations in that I kind of really got into it. Actually, it was when we were all working from home that I really got into it too. And yes, the battery life obviously is something that they can always talk about. But will there be something more than just, hey, you can wear it while you sleep? I would like to see more customization of like, it's always fun to see like Apple Watch faces, right? You never get like an Apple Watch face store because they like to really make sure they control that experience. But if there are in fact more things I could do to kind of easily communicate without having to go grab my phone, they always are really good about like, just a quick, reply and being able to kind of like scribble something fast to somebody. But I'm always into seeing new ways to make just life a little smoother. And they played the long game with their watch. I think you were right when you were talking about with Apple taking its time with AR, VR. This is the long game for them. And I don't know if we're going to see the physical manifestation of whatever you put on your face, but if they want to get developers into it, I know you said you didn't think it was likely, but they want to get developers into it. How can you talk about AR and VR without actually having something on stage to show off on what it's going to be? Or will it be just a one more thing? Hey, we're thinking of this space. I think if you're investing in getting Hollywood directors on board, this might be pretty splashy today. Then again, we still have rumors about talking about MacBooks coming out. So I feel like there's so much they're going to be just cramming into this presentation.
I know. Let's switch and talk a little bit about potential MacBooks. Now you mention it, just a quick time check. It is about 9 minutes until the Apple keynote starts at 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, Apple does not allow us to restream its keynote. So what we're actually going to do is something a little bit different this year. We are going to keep this live stream open, but we're just going to show our live chat throughout it because we want you to be able to go and watch the keynote in full on Apple's website, either on apple.com or on their YouTube channel, and keep our stream open in another tab. You'll be able to keep up to date with everything that's going on, see what our thoughts are behind the scenes, and then as soon as the keynote is over, you can come straight back to this tab and keep watching as we'll have a full debrief of everything that we saw today. You can kind of see a little preview. You can actually get a sneak peek because you're actually pretty lucky. You're going to be able to see our private behind the scenes Slack channel that I don't know what kind of gifts we're going to get in there, what sort of analysis that we'll be either having fun with. Maybe we'll see a couple of Craig Federighi jokes or memes that we can kind of get discussing, but it will be a behind the scenes sneak peek for you right there. I see Ayaz has returned. Are you with us again, Ayaz? I hope you are.
I have no idea if anything's working right now. My machine completely freaked out. This is a late model MacBook Pro, so Apple, if you are working on new hardware, maybe that's the problem. Or it's Chrome. Chrome was basically murdering this machine, so I had to switch to a different browser. Maybe I should have been using Safari in the first place. I'm sure everything's been going very well without me. Where were we at, Lex?
Well, actually, it's funny. Maybe your machine is giving you a hint that there is a MacBook Air that it wants to be replaced with on the way there. We actually started talking about the rumors of the MacBook Air, and I know you know a lot about what's coming on the Mac side. So why don't you kind of fill us in on the rumors, and then maybe we can kind of get into a little bit of what we actually want to see hardware-wise today.
Sure, sounds like a great idea. So let's talk about the Mac. So there's rumors that there's going to be new Macs, and Apple has said in the past that they still have one more that's got to be finished off with the new Apple Silicon, and that would be the Mac Pro. We have not seen that. Apple they've previewed the Mac Pro at WWDC in the past. Maybe it would show up this time. Maybe it'll just show like, hey, look, here's this thing with like 8 billion cores and whatever else that's going to be amazing, because the rumors of the Mac Pro have been going on for a while. And a lot of those chip designs seem like they end up in the Mac Studio. So whatever the Mac Pro is going to be, it's got to make the Mac Studio look not as powerful, which is kind of saying something nuts if you think that through. Then for the MacBook Air, that's the big one that we've been hearing just around the past couple of days, is that the MacBook Air might be the one that we will see today. And it would have a design closer to the MacBook Pro, the newer, more boxy, no more of that little sliver. That taper design could be going away. So that would be a different machine in general. This is a mock-up of a 14-inch MacBook Pro. It's with Luke. That guy has got a great YouTube channel, and he was, I believe, was on top of the Mac Studio when that broke. So a MacBook Pro 14-inch could arrive, and maybe that would get rid of the 13-inch one with the touch bar that's still around, just kind of kicking around. Maybe let's knock Intel out completely off that line. Although, one last thing I want to throw about this Mac stuff. When Tim Cook introduced the Apple Silicon thing, he said that we still have Intel machines coming. Now, it's been like 2 years, and I don't think they've done anything new with Intel. Bridget, you think there's any chance that there's any more Intel-based Macs coming, and maybe even at this event?
Well, Tim Cook did say it, right? I don't know if it's at this event. This is going to be interesting. If they're talking about new MacBooks and new hardware like this, I don't even know if it's the time that they even release it. They might save it for or that little detail necessarily for when they're ready to actually sell it. There's been reports from Bloomberg of limited supply because of COVID-19 shutdowns with the Chinese plants that make these computers. So even if we get a look at what a new MacBook Air is and other models, I don't think it's going to be like, and you could buy it Friday. I think it's going to be more like this is coming soon. And they are just kind of changing their timeline of talking about products because it takes longer to get these products out. For me, I'm also curious to see, are we going to hear about the smaller specs of the whole machine? Like we're going to see MagSafe chargers, Touch ID things. Are we going to see a camera notch on the screen like we saw for the recent Pro? And for me, everything that would be worth upgrading would be, I want to make sure that camera has HD because that's what we're doing now to talk to everyone on the show. So I want to make sure that all the laptops that going forward, like how good is the camera on the front.
We've also got this crazy report from The Elec. Okay, they said that Apple is working on a MacBook with OLED panels. Okay, and the report said that Apple's going to remove the polarizers from the screens, which would allow the panels to be flexible. And there's a display supply chain consultants analyst, Ross Young. He said something similar. He said that Apple's working on a foldable MacBook with a 20-inch display. So that means when it's completely unfolded, you got a 20-inch OLED display, and when you have it as a clamshell, you just would have a keyboard at the bottom. Lex, do you think there's any chance of that showing up today?
Am I a betting woman? Yeah, I am. I would say, look, it's one of those things like I would eat my hat if this happened today, and maybe I don't really want to eat my hat. Let's put it that way. So I think the chances are slim to none on this one, but I love hearing about these crazy rumors. And obviously if you look at what's happening in the foldable space, especially on the Samsung side, the Huawei side, and many other manufacturers who are experimenting here and making some really great devices, it's only a matter of time before Apple does show us something maybe in this area, because we've seen that the foldable space is not a fad. They're actually incredibly functional, usable devices. The Fold 3 and the Flip 3 were fantastic phones, and I'm sure we'll only see even more innovation as we get around to kind of the August-September timeframe with the new Fold 4 and the Flip 4. So not today for Apple. I might be eating my hat. If anyone has some good recipes for hat soup, let me know just in case, so I am prepared. But yeah, I think pretty unlikely.
Well, Dan Ackerman just tweeted out saying Tim Cook is standing in front of a giant screen and kicking off WWDC, which means that thing's about to start any minute now. I'm going to just double check, and maybe this won't make my machine die. It looks like that it hasn't started yet. What are we seeing right now? 2 minutes away. Right now Apple's live streaming some music, so if you want to listen to that stuff, go ahead. Bridget, any final thoughts before we have to run? Hello?
Oh, it cut out. Oh, it's on me?
Of course it cut out.
Okay.
See, that's on me. So anyway, this is what it looks like right now at WWDC. You got Tim Cook standing in front of a giant screen there. Don't forget, folks, we're going to have live reactions coming up at the very end. And maybe I'll be on the whole time. I have no idea because my machines are freaking the fudge out. And I'm hoping that we're going to see some awesome new Macs that could replace you, old boy. I guess you're going to have to go. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to this. I think we're going to see some really cool stuff. And I'm very excited to see if iOS can it actually do some really cool stuff that pulls people away from Android. People like me, because I think Apple's got some awesome hardware. That's right. I said it. I know I'm a shill for every company, so that's one of my things. So Apple's about to start. I think we'll be back in about, I don't know how long, whenever Tim Cook finishes. So come back. We'll see your live reactions with our live reactions. So we'll see you in a bit.
Keep your tabs open.
See you soon. Yeah, keep this tab open.
Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference 2022 just wrapped up, and there was a ton of stuff. I'm Aya Zakhtar with Alexis Savides and Bridget Carey, and we're going to give you our live reactions to what we just saw. And there was, I don't know where you want to start. Lex, do you want to start with iOS 16 and what we saw there?
Yeah, let's start with iOS. Just quickly, this was a huge keynote packed into, just under 2 hours. And I honestly felt like I could not catch a breath. There was so much to talk about here. Yeah, let's start with iOS 16 though first. So the big thing is obviously the new redesign to the lock screen. It's all about personalization. So your lock screen will now have a new look. You'll be able to customize things like the fonts, have widgets that show details such as the weather. And I think more interesting for me was the placement of widgets such as, say, like the weather, your calendar apps and activity rings, but also how they're surfaced in terms of for developers and other third-party apps going forward. They're now going to be at the bottom of your lock screen, so you're not necessarily going to have to open up your phone and see crucial details, say like there was showing the example of when your next Uber was arriving on the lock screen. I really think that this is something that I am very excited for. It's something that I think a lot of people in the Android ecosystem as well will be intrigued by too. And really, it's interesting to see how a lot of the features that were kind of a little bit previewed on WatchOS 8, there was a feature called the portrait mode watch face that kind of introduced this way of having photos in front of the time. And it's sort of interesting to see how those little nuances are coming to iOS slowly as well, but obviously with a lot more customization. And the lock screen, I think for me, was the big wow feature of iOS 16, which is what they started with. And the notifications grouping as well, also cleaning that up a bit, which is exciting because if you use iOS at the moment, you're probably used to having lots and lots of notifications just kind of appear as a big clump. So seeing that neatened up too is pretty exciting. And also the way that link focus status. Now this is something where you can have multiple different lock screens configured. So when you are activating a different focus status, you will also automatically have that particular wallpaper and all of those widgets and all that customization that you've already set up appear during that focus status. So if you're, say, like during a work mode in the work focus, the actual link focus status will show your work lock screen, which I think is a really nice touch. However, I know already that I'm going to start getting really confused by having 5 different focus statuses and 5 different lock screens and all of these things that I need to customize. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on my phone getting this all set up. I know that, which might kind of negate the value of all that focus time and the screen time settings, but we'll see. I actually am really excited about this.
Now, Bridget, you were talking about iMessages before. So there's some changes to iMessage, as in you can edit what you send and undo send stuff. What features got you excited about iMessage?
Editing iMessage is crazy. I'm so curious how much time can go by for you to edit a message if you typo or whatever it may be, because there's a lot of potential for like weirdness, like I never said that, and just like going back and like pretending something never happened. And also there's the unread feature, which I think is actually better for my mental health. Sometimes you might be driving, doing something, you're busy, but a ding kind of comes up, you look at it and you have the recipient know, oh, she read it, but she ain't responding. At least now you could be like, oh, I'll get to that later. I really didn't mean to engage with it yet. So I like the unread feature when you're busy. And now that you can edit messages between each other, how is that going to work?
You're going to have to trust the people you're talking to, or there's going to be some really weird conversation with screenshots of the pre-edited thing, because that's still a possibility. There was all kinds of like Google Lens-like features in the camera now with live text. They talked about that. So essentially, if you point the camera at stuff, you can grab text, you can translate it. On-device dictation, I thought that was really exciting about iOS 16, because when your connection isn't that great, like I've experienced in certain days, it's always good when your device can work offline. So that I think was pretty cool. Wallet. I was surprised by this because there are keys that you can put into Wallet, and you can share it between apps and mail and everything like that. But what Apple said, and I hope they don't go back on this, is that this is going to be an industry standard. So if you don't have an iPhone, you can still share these keys around with other people. I think that's very surprising and actually very positive. Nothing like seeing standards come together where Apple's involved, because sometimes they like to play in their own walled garden. They even talked about an Apple Pay Later. This I was surprised by seeing this at WWDC. I thought this would show up during like iPhone Day in September. But this allows people to split the cost of buying something using Apple Pay of 4 equal payments, 0 interest and no fees. And for the developers, they don't need to do anything new other than use Apple Pay in their apps. Lex, what did you think of the services aspect of this?
I was actually really intrigued by all of the wallet developments. I really think that there are, those sort of afterpay companies that do this already through other integrations through websites. Might be a little concerned about Apple sort of stepping into this territory, but I am not surprised by this, especially given how, Apple has been starting to kind of dip its toes into the world of personal finance in many ways, obviously with the Apple Card, with the Apple Cash Card and so on, and all those cashback deals. It's not a surprise to see this, and I think it will be intriguing to see who adopts this. The one that I'm most excited about within Wallet is something we heard about a couple months ago. It is called Tap to Pay on iPhone. So this is going to be huge, I think, for merchants, say like small businesses or people who just have an iPhone. They don't want to necessarily buy a Square reader or something like that. You'll just be able to tap 2 iPhones together and basically pay. Yes, Android did have something very similar back in the day, although it hasn't been, I believe it hasn't been a thing for a little while now, but it's nice to see that coming to the Apple side of things. And yeah, like a couple of partners like Shopify are starting to roll this out now. And I believe it's actually available. There have been some people seeing this in action at the Apple Store in Cupertino or at the Apple campus down there. So I would not be surprised if we started to see this really quickly ramp up, because the support is already there in the current version of iOS. So excited to see those features coming to Wallet, and the ability to share keys with non-Apple phones, depending on whether they adopt certain standards or so on, which is it's interesting. I will be intrigued to see if the Android side jumps on this, because I think Apple is slow. I want to get your thoughts on this. Apple is slowly dipping its toes into kind of integrating, or not necessarily integrating, but playing a little bit nicer with other ecosystems. We saw things like FaceTime. You can now have Android users jump into that via web. Do you think this is something that Android and iOS are starting to play a little bit nicer?
Oh, absolutely not. I think this is the same thing Apple used to do with the iPods and stuff, that halo effect. That was an old term. Basically, when you have an experience using an Apple device or an Apple service, you go, hey, actually, that was pretty good. I should check out their hardware. I'll go do this other stuff. So maybe while HomeKit and Matter and that kind of stuff, where devices can work together and stuff's more seamless in that thing, the main point is to get you to buy something from Apple, because Apple puts a lot of, some people have thought about this as the Apple tax. Basically, when you buy stuff from other people, it's usually cheaper. But the amount of information that's going out from you, from your other device, a lot of information going out. Versus Apple, they're like, look, you pay us a lot of money and you get some privacy. So I don't know if they'll open up everything to everybody, but that's definitely, I think it's just another ploy to get more money for Apple, because I mean, that's their business. That's what they got to do. So I think that's what they're going to end up doing when it comes to how well they'll play with others. There was so much stuff. I want to talk about CarPlay, because this thing was kind of I was not expecting CarPlay to be so completely redesigned. And I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car in a while, but I was very interested in this. Apparently, CarPlay can essentially overtake your entire car's UI. So like your dashboard, everything that's going on, you can control it using CarPlay. Bridget, what did you think of CarPlay?
Well, I was getting all uppity in the chat about this, because I am not a fan of how much distracted driving possibilities there are here, because I'm not someone who wants to buy a car that has a giant screen in the way. That said, with them integrating this, you see where things are going. Apple sees that more cars are having giant screens, and they want to make sure that the CarPlay experience kind of works well with the kind of car you have. I want to know, does it work well with the kind of person I am? Like maybe I just want something simple with directions. I don't need all these widgets everywhere. Can a user be able to say, no, I don't need this and that. I just want a non-animated, very basic kind of, direction app showing in front of me. So I guess it's to be seen. But Lexi, I liked what you also said in the chat. All this mock-up of what a car dashboard should look like makes you wonder, is this coming from the department at Apple that's been tinkering with cars? Is this what they want to see in a future car, like an Apple car?
Yeah, all those rumors about Apple Car, we've honestly been hearing almost as long as the AR VR headset, which I guess we should talk about at some stage, because we didn't hear anything about hardware, or only a very few little nuggets that might hint towards that in the future. But yes, the long-awaited Apple Car project, I think this is a preview of what that might be. Is it the totality of the Apple Car project? I really don't know. But I think this interface does look really nice. But Bridget, as you say, this is going to be a really delicate balancing act of not being overwhelmed by too much data, because this is still a display. It's not a heads-up display necessarily. So you're still having to take your eyes off the road momentarily to take a look at all this. That being said, the CarPlay integrations that I've had so far in rental cars, not my own car because I deliberately bought a car with a low-tech, no screen, but this implementation almost makes me want to install a third-party, like a aftermarket install of a CarPlay screen, and maybe get the advantages of this. But it wouldn't be as amazing as having a built-in one if I did buy a new car with an extensive screen, because it's now able to basically adapt all those widgets that you see, can actually mean that you don't have to exit out of the CarPlay interface to change the air conditioning levels, for example. So I'm torn, because I think I was not expecting this, and I'm actually really excited by it. But yeah, not ready to buy a new car yet. Maybe I should look into that aftermarket installation of a CarPlay screen. I'm tempted, Ayaz.
Conceptually, with CarPlay, with this interface essentially going with you, if you go from car to car, rental car, maybe you get a different car, I kind of love that idea. You do all this work to customize your phone. If you can customize your display and have the 4 things you want up, or the 85 things you want up at one time, every car is your car, which I kind of love that idea, because I like the idea, ride share sounds like a great idea, or if you're going to be leasing vehicles, there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't have the same vehicle all the time. That seems like a really interesting way to personalize a device that you don't need to own necessarily. So I'm very, very intrigued with this for the future of cars, because when I got rid of my cars, all the tech in cars got really awesome right after that. So that was way back in 2004. So that's a long time ago. Let's talk about WatchOS. There was a lot of developments there too. They've got some watch faces. Woohoo! There's a new Siri UI, blah, blah. They spent a lot of time on the new health and activity stuff. I don't know how Apple's doing it, but they're trying to figure out all kinds of ways to make sure that your runs go better. So if you're running a lot, you want to make sure that your form is better. Your watch is going to be able to help you do that, which I think is pretty interesting. They talked about stuff for triathletes. So when you're trying to figure out what the Apple Watch is for, it's you can do a moderate jog, or if you want to do, running, cycling, and swimming, Apple Watch is going to have you covered there too. Lex, are you feeling like being a triathlete with an Apple Watch?
I'm definitely not a triathlete. I will be the first to admit that. But as an Apple Watch user, these fitness features, particularly around running, I think are exciting. I really like how they're kind of slowly building up to making this a complete running companion. It's not quite there yet. And many features that we did see today are kind of catching up to what already exists on the market from other wearables, like your Fitbits, like your Garmin's, things like heart rate zone monitoring and being able to kind of give you haptic or voice feedback when you land in certain zones. That's a long time feature that I've been really hoping for the Apple Watch. It's great to see that finally there. But I do really like how you'll be able to have the watch automatically detect when you are changing those activities in that multi-sport workout. Even if you're not a triathlete, it is nice to not have to manually stop and start workouts or add a workout from the watch itself. There are many times when I'm just casually, riding, cycling, and then I'll decide I'll just go for a quick jog afterwards. So I don't have to keep adding another workout. I can just select this multi-sport workout. I like that. And the fact that now they're going to slowly start bringing a lot of these activity ring tracking features to the iPhone as well. So you don't necessarily have to have an Apple Watch. So data from your fitness and tracking apps can sort of contribute to your rings and kind of get you in that, you know, a little bit of competitive ecosystem. If you have friends who are sharing rings and so on, you can have that data from, you know, the iPhone without necessarily having to have a watch. Sleep tracking was the other one that I was really glad to see on the Apple Watch, especially considering many other wearables have had this for a very long time. Apple Watch has obviously had the ability to have sleep stage tracking through third-party apps, but from the first-party app, it's always been, you know, not available. So I'm glad to see that coming through. But there's still a little piece that is trying to link all this data together that we don't quite have on the Apple Watch, and that's making sure that all of this data from your sleep to your workouts and all of this extra stuff from your heart health activities with AFib history, how all of this contributes to things like your readiness and how ready you are to do a workout if your body is stressed and so on. I was really hoping to see a little bit more today about something, not necessarily the same, but something that is contributing all of that data into an easy to understand metric or score, maybe something like what Fitbit or Aura does with its daily readiness score. It just brings in all these data points and says, you know, this is kind of how your body is doing today. Maybe you should take it easy and not do that workout because you didn't have a great night's sleep, or you're actually feeling a lot better than you know, mentally might feel. So you should go and do a workout. Your body is ready to do that. So a little bit more interpretation of all these metrics would be nice. And that was something I was really hoping to see today with WatchOS 9. But the pieces of the puzzle are being laid down. I just need to see them all connected and complete soon.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely had something like where they would suggest things about medications, because the amount of things that go on with Apple and health is just exploding. There's so many different things that they're doing. They actually having AFib history being tracked by your watch, and you could share that with your doctor and figure out what you should be doing. And if you are taking medications of any kind, I feel like I'm just talking nonsense. You can scan the label of your medicine, and your phone will tell you, hey, by the way, these two drugs have a bad interaction with something. It's like, oh, okay, that's really, really helpful. So I would think that maybe they could use something like that kind of knowledge to eventually help you with your other health stuff. But in the most important stuff, hey, this drug that you're taking with alcohol will be a serious problem. Don't do that. Bridget, what did you think of this like beefed up health push?
Oh, it's always interesting how Apple makes you really believe you can't live without your iPhone. It actually is. It is interesting to do this. People go to Apple with this information because of how much they stress about being private and secure versus going to a third-party app. So I'm for it. I just think going back to what Lexi said, I mean, that really is the key. We're getting so much more data now, and it's the theme everywhere. It's like, how are we organizing all this data? How are we able to calculate, do something about all this data? I am not someone who is someone who works out a lot. And I, for the first time, am going, oh, the Apple Watch is actually going to have some interesting information that might, you know, be able to be useful beyond like you did a lot today. You know, like, okay, thanks. I closed a loop. Now there's a lot more monitoring. So yeah, where are we taking this and seeing that like, an alert that, hey, don't forget to take your pills, help your mom take her pills, and also don't have an interaction that's bad with something else, or hey, a reminder, better not go drinking tonight. That kind of stuff is actually useful. Okay, finally, all the data is getting useful. That is the good direction to be in.
We did have some hardware announcements. Apple announced a new chip, the M2. There was all kinds of fun, nerdy numbers, like 20 billion transistors. That's great. 20% more than the M1. I don't really know what that does in a practical sense, but that's true. But what's really important is that it's actually coming to the new MacBook Air. That's going to have an M2 built into it, starting at $1199. 4 colors for the new MacBook Air: dark blue, space gray, starlight, and silver. We've got the new MagSafe on there, an audio jack. It's no longer wedge-shaped. It does look a lot more like the new MacBook Pros. 2 Thunderbolt ports. Display is 13.6 inches. They're saying this thing is 2.7 pounds. It looks super thin. It's got Touch ID. There's no touch bar. So if those of you who were hoping that would come back, sorry, not happening. Full function keys are there, 20% faster than the M1 version of the MacBook Air. Fanless. It's actually coming with a power adapter, which has 2 USB-C ports, so you can charge 2 different things. It supports fast charging at 67 watts. Like, all of this sounded pretty modern. Lex, what do you think of the new MacBook Air?
I've always been a fan of the Air, and this is a long overdue redesign. The one thing you didn't mention, I think, was the notch, which it looks like it's here to stay, isn't it? So I guess I'll have to get over my notch aversion, because it does look like a really premium machine for the price. And I think what a lot of people might forget with the MacBook Air is that this is, for many people, the kind of the gateway, the entry into the Apple ecosystem in terms of the macOS world, at least. So I think it was a very long overdue update, and the performance all looks good for what we've seen in terms of the numbers. I really think, though, the main draw card of the MacBook Air is its portability. And its battery life. So 18 hours of video playback was the number that was quoted. So we'll obviously be doing our own battery testing and performance benchmarks and so on when we actually get our hands on it. The one thing, though, that I did want to see, and now the Apple Store is back up again, maybe I can go in and see in terms of availability, because we did mention the price, obviously, starting at $11.99. But I just wanted to sort of see in terms of, can I go and get one right now? I don't think so. So obviously there was rumors, obviously before the keynote, we heard some supply chain issues, or sort of, and now this is going to be announced and then maybe revealed, or availability a little bit later. That was, I think, both Ming Chi Kuo and Mark Gurman from Bloomberg also had that speculation, I believe. So it does look like unavailable for delivery and pickup so far on the Apple Store. So intrigued to see when we actually get an official release date. But so far, I'm excited about the MacBook Air, because the design is what makes this thing. And as I said, it's the MacBook that I think most people who aren't necessarily Mac or Apple people will gravitate to first. I just want to get my hands on one right now.
Yeah, it looks quite nice. I was looking at, we're just seeing the images of the MacBook Air now, also the page showing that if you want that little adapter, the fast charging one, it's only $20. So that's kind of nice that Apple isn't like charging an arm and a leg for charging this device. They're also keeping the M1 MacBook Air around, and that's going to be at $999. So that's kind of a nice way to keep their product line. MacBook Air starts at $999. Yeah, that's the old one, but it's still pretty dang fast. There was also a lot less celebrated new MacBook Pro 13-inch. I mean, they might have talked about it for about 22 seconds or so. 13 inches, M2, supports up to 24 gigabytes of memory, starts at $1299. They didn't talk at all about the camera. There's no notch on this thing. It just looks like a regular old MacBook Pro. I believe it has regular. Does it have the regular keys? I got to double check that. I assume it's got no touch bar, but it was. They didn't spend a lot of time on that. Bridget, why do you think the MacBook
so fast?
Why do you think the MacBook Pro got such short shrift?
Well, I too was going, all right, what about the camera? And then all of a sudden, oh, continuity camera. What? You can put your iPhone up, and it's almost like it was, you pay attention now to over here. You could buy a cool accessory and have your phone become the camera for your computer. That I want to see more of. And so I guess I am on the fence. Like, I'm looking at getting a new laptop. I'm on the fence now between the Air and the Pro. I'm glad there's no notch, but I want to make sure if I was to get to Pro that like the camera's great on it. Otherwise, yeah, I guess we're all going to be using our iPhones now as cameras. And what was up with that top-down view? That was incredible.
Yeah, let's set the stage. No pun intended for macOS Ventura. That's the new macOS. Rumors was going to be called Mammoth. I think Ventura is a heck of a lot better name. They showed a couple of features like Stage Manager, this new Windows manager, how to actually organize your stuff, and that's coming to iPadOS. But the thing that stole the show was this thing called Continuity Camera, where you can use your iPhone's camera as your computer's camera. I can talk. That's really easy. And if you have a certain iPhone, I guess with the iPhone Pro, they showed this remarkable desk view. So it's a person on the left side, talking like normal, and then you could see their desk, and it's all done with the iPhone. So it's somehow taking an ultra-wide image of what you're doing on your desk. It's correcting all of that weird skew. It's cropping out certain other objects, it looked like magic. I thought this was one of the coolest things I've seen. I don't know if it's actually going to work as well, but this is the demo. Lex, what do you think of this continuity camera?
Absolutely wild. For me, this was probably the highlight of the whole keynote for me, and that's saying a lot because I think there was a lot in this presentation. I actually just tried to do a little kind of simulation. So holding the iPhone in roughly the position that it would be held in if you did mount it on top of your laptop with those mounts that seem to be made by Belkin, available later in the year is what was said. So using the ultra wide camera to snap a photo, definitely with the orientation that the laptop was at, it was kind of slightly tilted up. There is a lot of distortion, obviously, with wide angle lenses, and it wasn't able to capture as much on the desk as I was expecting. However, I was actually surprised about how much that I could see, even just in a cropped or non-altered image from the ultra wide angle lens. So I just really want to see this in action. And I think definitely for people in the video field like us, I was just so pumped about this because I'm almost going to have my own like top-down camera system, all from the iPhone, simultaneously grabbing my image straight from the main wide camera on the iPhone, and then the ultra wide being to actually demonstrate what I'm actually doing on the table, which I think is wild. So there's going to obviously be a lot of the computational photography stuff happening behind the scenes to get this image to not have as much distortion as wide angle lenses exhibit, especially the ones on our phones today. But I want this feature and I want it yesterday, but I honestly think that this one was the star of the show. And as soon as I saw this announced, I just sort of stopped what I was doing and I have to tweet about how cool this is. So if something exciting happened like in the minute after that, I wasn't listening because I was just interested in desk view and the continuity camera. Bridget, was your mind blown as much as mine with this? Because this was really cool for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm thinking about all the same things about like, oh, what can I do now with this camera? The fact that they are able to compute and change so it doesn't look distorted. I want to put it to the test. I'm very physical with my note taking. I'm always got a pen and paper in my hand. And I would love to see if you could, instead of talking about all this free-form board collaboration, what if you could just be right there drawing something quickly out instead of going, all right, open the app and let me show you. Like if you could just scribble something and have someone see it, how cool is that?
I love that. I want that camera. I want that thing to work. I want it to work as well as they showed in that demo. I didn't notice this at the time because my mind was being blown, but they did show like a deck of cards and they looked like they were the proper proportions. The keyboard looked correct. They had the letter A on there. Everything looked properly done. It didn't look like it was all skewed or weird. There's like a round cup with the coffee there. There's all of these shapes proving that like, hey, look, if this does work, it looks like there's a second camera above your desk. And that's some fun stuff right there. Speaking of fun stuff, Apple spent some time on gaming. They were talking about Resident Evil Village coming to the Mac. I'm not a gaming person. Does anybody know if that's a big deal? Let me know in the comments.
I found it interesting that you don't typically hear about a horror game in an Apple presentation. So maybe Apple did that for a reason. I mean, Resident Evil is very popular. Obviously, everyone's talking about it right now. But just a little note. I'm like, usually when I hear about Apple and gaming, it's a very cutesy game.
Yeah, they talked about basically coming up with, how do I explain this? With the actual extra frames being added. It was something about like low-res images, making them higher and upscaled using Metal 3. Now, Lex, you thought this might actually be like groundwork for the AR VR headset in the future, right?
Look, that's my theory. I have zero grounds to base this on, just apart from a hunch. I feel like looking at those developments that we saw, especially for developers, and talking about all of the APIs that are going to be available for them. Metal in particular, if you're thinking about graphics and rendering and things like that. The other sort of nugget that I found in the keynote presentation, and I'm sure there will be lots more over the coming days that kind of hint towards potential AR, VR integrations, even though we didn't hear anything about the headset at all, was this note about. It was about the spatial audio implementation on the AirPods Pro. So basically, you'll be able to use the True Depth camera on the phone to make a personalized sort of audio profile of I'm assuming of your, the shape of your head and the ears. And to be able to map the sound more accordingly and better for your particular your particular physiology. So it's interesting to talk about when you hear other earbuds and headphone manufacturers, say like Sony, they do something kind of a little quirky where they ask you to hold the phone in front of your face and turn your head left and right to take photos of your ears. And that's essentially to, get the shape of your ears to map things like their spatial audio version, or 360 reality audio is what they call it, I believe, to the actual shape of your ears. But this way, it's actually involving video and depth information, not just from static images. So I think it's a hint, because all of these things is getting us ready to take these odd measurements with our bodies and interpreting all of this data, like, head tracking and so on, because that's going to be really crucial for this rumored VR, AR headset, whatever it's going to be. So there were some hints there. I think there will be more over the coming days, or at least I really hope so.
Yeah, and then Apple wrapped up with iPadOS 16, and that's going to be a lot more Mac-like. I thought that was great. Essentially, Craig Federighi explained that people wanted a lot of features, and we're going to give you a lot of the features there, including resizable windows. I know that sounds silly. You can have also an overlapping windows, like, you could on a laptop. And one of the coolest things that they did, they showed, I got to stop talking because Craig Federighi became a meme machine throughout the whole event. And this was, I believe, the predecessor to iPadOS. It was him running in slow-mo with his fabulous hair. Kudos to him and the Apple team for putting something so silly together for something so productive. Because the next thing to talk about was collaborative efforts, and that was really dull. But I wanted to talk about the fact that when you plug in an iPad to a screen, an iPad Pro to an external monitor, it acts a lot more like a Mac. You can have a lot more windows up. You actually can have, you're not mirroring your display anymore. So it's actually an external screen. So it's so close to iPad and Mac joining up because they're so similar. So many of the same features that we talked about in macOS is coming to iPadOS. If it's an iOS, it's going to iPadOS. It seems very, very, very eventual. We're going to hit this inevitable point where macOS and iPadOS become the same thing. Bridget, what do you think about the new iPadOS?
What is a computer? This is one of those highly debatable moments where people are like, no, the iPad shouldn't be more like a Mac, and people are waiting. Well, why not? It'll be a true working device when you can finally not have to feel like it's so different from your Mac book, and you could just kind of go back and forth between these worlds. So I would like to see how useful it is based on how many kind of, applications might be realistic. I mean, they always show these great applications on there where like, I can collaborate with my team. And I'm like, well, I'm not always doing that. So at least in my line of work. But I think overall, it's curious to see where it's going next. You're right. This is like merging everything. So no matter what you have to do, no matter what system you have, like Goldilocks will be something that fits you. And Lexi, I know you were the one who made the bet about eating your hat, but I guess I'm going to have to be the one who eats a hat for not having anything about VR or AR. Oh my gosh, I really thought they were going to go somewhere with this with all the gaming talk. We got nothing. That is the only hat I had near me. It's a Back to the Future hat, but there you go. It's a
lovely hat. Folks, don't forget to stick with CNET for lots more coverage. For the first time in years, we got a demo room. So we got Dan Ackerman was over there, John Kim's there. They're going to be taking all kinds of video and stuff. So look for a video later today on that, because there's going to be hands-on footage of this stuff, and let's see if stuff works as well as Apple claims. Lexi, any final thoughts?
I was really impressed with how much they managed to pack into this keynote, as I mentioned at the start. I think something that we didn't touch on that I think was also really interesting to sort of talk about the future of passwords or lack thereof with passkeys within Safari. So be able to use cryptographic information and basically keep your account safe just by authenticating with Touch ID or Face ID. And so the likelihood of phishing that is almost zero, basically, because it's all on device and it's all requiring your authentication. So interesting to sort of see how that actually implements in practice, especially for people who are not necessarily across what cryptographic techniques are and they just forget their passwords. It's as simple as that for some folk, myself included. So really interested to sort of see a little bit more about that in practice. And finally, getting to see desk view in action, because that was my key takeaway. Desk view, the passkey stuff, and I was also excited about all of the WatchOS 9 stuff, but I'm biased because I love my wearables, so that was always going to be a big thing for me.
What about you, Bridget?
Feels like it was a lot, but the main theme is just making life easier with how much data we're getting now. Started off with notifications being smoother, more customizable. You heard things about making parent controls easier. That's something that's always a big pain. Down to just making it easier if you want to have your iPad and do Mac work with it. So I think they're just going, all right, what do we do with all this information overload? We just make it a little easier now to digest it.
Yeah, my head's spinning from everything. So the iPad OS is my favorite thing. I want to make sure that thing actually runs like a Mac. I want Macs to run like iPads. I want them all to become one thing at some point. Give me a touchscreen on the Mac at some point. That'd be kind of nice. So basically, I'm complaining about the stuff we didn't get yet. But anyway, iPad OS, excited about that. Ventura looks pretty neat too. So let's see. That pretty much does it for us right now. Lexi, thank you for being on. Bridget, BBG, Beecham, Bonnie, everybody, and you, the audience, thank you. And don't forget to subscribe, hit notification bells, and all this fun stuff so you can watch more CNET content.